When you take a look at your school's website, what do you see? Take a look at other schools' websites and check out their about pages. What common language do you see? Buried behind information about the school calendar, registration, and transportation, you will probably find descriptions, a list of goals, or a mission statement that says something about nurturing young people to be creative and collaborative, or become active problem solvers, and includes something about being a positive contributor to the world for a better future. You will probably find adjectives like imaginative, innovative, inspiring. These are the same words that you will find on posters, on the walls at school and classrooms. At the end of the day, it is clear that we as educators and schools are trying to develop our students into creative, collaborative problem solvers. It's important that we're all equipped with a creative problem-solving toolkit because we don't want to just accept the consequences of the problems and challenges that we face, but have the ability to take action and bring positive change through innovative responses and solutions. Sidney Parnes, who famously co-developed the creative problem-solving process, or CPS, stated, "We can all create a desired future instead of merely accepting what life offers." Creative problem solving can empower us to try and design our future the way we want it to be, making everyone a designer. This is especially important in our current state of the world, a VUCA world, an acronym that describes the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity of the types of challenges that we face today and in the future. This importance is evident in the recent Future of Jobs report, where of the top 10 skills that are rising in prominence in professional spaces, 5 of these skills fall in the innovation and creativity and problem-solving clusters. And 2 of the top 10 skills fell into the interpersonal cluster, both incredibly important for creative problem-solving. This also matches the beliefs of educators. According to a global survey, 97% of educators find creative problem-solving as important for students to learn in school. However, in the same survey, it showed that creative problem-solving skills are currently playing a minimal role in today's curricula. For example, innovative thinking is emphasized in only 12% of the curriculum. So within education, we use these trendy buzzwords like creativity, problem-solving, and growth mindset. But are we as educators and schools really equipped to provide our students with authentic opportunities to learn these skills? I have to admit, when I entered the teaching profession, I was pretty ill-equipped in helping students develop their creative problem-solving skills, or even design learning experiences that allowed them to use the process in authentic ways. My education and training to become an educator did not include how to teach these skills, what that would look like, or what that would entail. And I think this is probably a similar situation for most educators as well. I think this led to some schools not effectively teaching these skills or just totally lacking these type of experiences. And who can blame them when there is a lack of training and professional development for teaching creative problem solving? This leads to frustration from all parties involved. So what I'd like to share in this video are the things I've learned in my journey in equipping my students with creative problem solving skills, as well as how I design learning experiences that provide relevant and authentic opportunities for creative problem solving. But what is creative problem solving exactly? If you search for this term on the internet, you will find over 300 million search results. A lot of the information you will find in the top search results can be traced back to the work done by Alex Osborne in the 1940s, an American creativity theorist who coined the term brainstorming. In the 1950s, Osborne and Sidney J. Parnes developed the creative problem-solving process, or CPS, a methodology for approaching a problem or a challenge in an imaginative and innovative way. It's an approach that helps us to redefine the problems and opportunities you face, come up with new innovative responses and solutions, and then take action. Since the start of my teaching journey, I've tried to find a creative problem-solving toolkit that I could equip my students with. But something that was not only scaffolded, but wasn't superficial or shallow. Something more expansive and holistic, focused on not only the steps of the creative problem-solving process, but the practices and mindsets that build a creative problem-solving culture. Luckily, I went to a small education conference in 2014 and was introduced to the design thinking methodology. Design thinking is an empathetic, creative problem-solving toolkit of mindsets and practices that cultivates an innovation-friendly, human-centered culture. To me, design thinking is the ultimate creative problem-solving toolkit because it takes Osborne's process of approaching a problem or a challenge in an imaginative and innovative way, but in addition, it heavily focuses on empathy and human-centered practices, where decisions are made, ideas are generated based on the needs and desires of the people who are facing the problem or challenge. So empathy being the foundation of the whole process. At its core, design thinking has 5 practices: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. Let's take a look at an example unit I've done in the past to learn about these practices. In this unit, students were focusing on the following driving question: how might we improve our local community? For the social studies unit, students learned how communities were designed to meet the needs of its members by providing them with spaces to live, work, play, and solve problems. Empathize is the practice or the act of gaining a deep understanding of the context, the problem, and the stakeholders involved. But most importantly, the people who are directly affected by the problem and who will ultimately use the innovative solution, the end users. The goal is to gain insights that can lead to opportunities for innovation. Students walk through the community to make observations of the residential and business areas, the people living and working in the community, and the available transportation systems. They also interviewed the local community members, business owners, and residents to learn about their needs and wants. The define practice is the act of synthesizing the information that was gained through empathy work, developing a problem statement, or improving an existing one. Through empathy work, students gained insights about the following members of the local community. Residents need a way to access a greater variety of restaurants and entertainment that does not require them to drive to other locations. Business people and students need a way to rest and relax because surprisingly they work or study for 8 to 9 hours each day. Older community members need a way to exercise because they are conscious of their health. These problem statements are valuable because they place the needs, wants, and desires of the end user at the forefront and guides the whole creative problem-solving process. Ideate involves the brainstorming process where stakeholders are encouraged to think of large quantities of wild creative ideas, where they defer judgment, and where people build upon the ideas of others to increase the creative momentum. With these insights in mind, students brainstormed different ways to meet the needs of their community members, and through convergent thinking, designed a city plan using the most optimal, viable ideas they could come up with. Prototype is the act of creating something tangible, an experimental model that can communicate an idea that could possibly solve the problem statement, that could be tested and elicits feedback from the end users. It is a way to get ideas out of our minds and in the hands of end users. It also provides opportunities for learning, problem solving, and thinking through ideas that may arise through the act of creation. With the community members' needs, wants, and desires in mind, students designed city plans that included a variety of options for food and entertainment, places for exercise like golf driving ranges and hiking trails, and places for relaxation like spas, parks, and gardens. They also included different ways to make the community more accessible to potential customers for businesses. Test is the act of sharing prototypes with end users and having them use and experience the prototypes, learning what parts worked well and what parts didn't. It is an opportunity to find failure points that can be improved, and again, an opportunity to empathize and learn more about the community members. After getting feedback from peers and improving ideas, students presented their city plan at the City Plan Expo, where community members, parents, students, teachers, and the local urban planner got to see what the students came up with. Students used the practice of storytelling to illustrate how their city plan met the needs, wants, and desires of community members. In addition, design thinking is not only a process with embedded practices, but also involves a set of creative problem-solving mindsets. These are enduring characteristics and thinking that lead to patterns of innovation-friendly behaviors when faced with challenges, dispositions, and behaviors that define who we are as creative problem solvers. These mindsets actually help design thinkers effectively execute the practices we discussed. Without these mindsets, practitioners are merely doing these actions. Instead, with mindsets, you are carrying out these practices with intention, purpose, and guided by appropriate beliefs and attitudes. The mindsets help manifest the practices of design thinking. Let's take a look at a few of these mindsets. The mindsets that make up this collection are from IDEO, Stanford University's D-School, and the book Design Thinking, New Product Development Essentials from the PDMA. First mindset is empathy, or human-centeredness. Students had to think about the perspective of community members to gain a deep understanding and the complexity of the context as well as the end user's needs, wants, and desires. Second is beginner's mindset. Students get to think and see things from a novice point of view and places themselves as the learner at all times, listening, questioning, learning, and setting aside biases and assumptions. Third is embrace ambiguity, where students understand that it is okay to be confused or uncomfortable due to the lack of clarity on how to create the city plan, but understanding that by collecting information, exploring possibilities, and making connections, there might be a solution to what was thought to be an ambiguous situation. Within this ambiguous situation, it is important for students to have a holistic and integrative mindset to see how the concepts of the community, needs and wants, security, and belonging are part of a holistic system. Having understanding of the relationships and interactions that these concepts and ideas have with one another. Next is optimism. Students had to believe that their work could possibly bring positive change or impact to the community, no matter how small or big the impact or change is, through perseverance, learning, and work. Students also were developing their creative confidence, the belief that everyone is a creative problem solver and that they can generate creative ideas and have the ability to make them into a reality, which leads to the mindset of bias towards action, an action-oriented mentality that takes ideas and actually makes them happen, understanding that things move forward by the act of doing. The make it mindset focuses on being experimental. Students had to understand that it is important to first quickly create simple, imperfect prototypes to learn by doing or building, and have an iterative mindset where they seek to always improve and refine multiple iterations of their ideas and prototypes to produce better or more innovative solutions in shorter periods of time. With the learn from failure mindset, students had to embrace experimentation, trying out different ideas, and making mistakes to uncover new questions, ideas, and learnings that ultimately can lead to improvements and innovations to their city plans. Now, how do we design these types of learning experiences that focus on real-world contexts and end users and provide students with the opportunity to develop into empathetic, creative problem solvers? The following is the process I use to develop this real-world context. First, you need to start with the standards. You will need to examine and study your standards to gain a deep understanding of what students will be able to know and do. There is a specific mindset that is needed for this whole process. The edupermaculture mindset is a set of beliefs that allows us to simulate experiences or directly utilize behavior, strategies, practices, and systems found in successful real-world learning environments and integrate them into school learning experiences and ecosystems. This mindset helps us to constantly look at what is going on outside our education bubble and connect ourselves with the challenges that exist in the real world and what successful learning looks like in those contexts. We then move to step number 2, taking a look at the standards and trying to find what real-world context, one outside of the education setting, would require a professional to use these set of knowledge and skills. The real-world context would require a holistic understanding, a systems perspective to see the interconnectedness and relationship between the key academic concepts that make up the context. The context would involve a challenge or a project that doesn't have one right answer. It's open-ended enough that students would come up with different answers to the problem and create different products. It's a challenge or a project that would require prototyping and experimenting in a situation that might be ambiguous for students at first. And of course involves the participation of end users who students would be empathizing with. So for our unit example, the real-world context was that students took on the role of urban planners and designed a city plan to improve the living and working experience of its residents and businesses. Once a real-world context and a challenge or a project has been developed that would require students to be able to perform the standards, it is time to create an overview of what the unit would look like through a learning narrative. A learning narrative is any visual representation of what your students will experience within a unit or a project. In this respect, the students who undergo this experience are the heroes of this learning narrative, and we, the educators, are the mentors who guide them through their learning journey. This makes the unit more meaningful and relevant because as the protagonists, they are the ones who are making key decisions that have consequences, whether good or bad, overcome obstacles, and get to resolve the problem of the learning narrative. Learning narratives are beneficial because they help educators see the relationships between the learning events within a project or a unit. It provides a holistic view of how each learning event is essential to the overall narrative, but also how the concepts or the standards of the unit or project are connected to one another, bringing the project down to its essence. This requires an edu-permaculture mindset because we are trying to replicate the best we can what the professionals in the field would experience for our students. So for the city plan unit, I tried to best replicate the process of what an actual urban planner would go through. Next, I take the professional process of completing the project within the real-world context and then convert it into a learning plan that is appropriate for my students. I am trying to make it as authentic as possible, not only replicating the process, but also directly utilizing their effective learning strategies, behaviors, and methods. It is important to note that the project is not done in a section of the unit, but it is actually the unit. So students will be learning within the real-world context throughout the unit, taking on the role of a professional and applying the knowledge and skills within an authentic project the whole time. Creating a real-world context based on the standards helps students to naturally ask the overarching question of the unit, as well as questions that lead to investigations and reflections of the content and skills in the unit's standards. So for our example, students naturally ask questions based on the context, like what is a community, what is its purpose, how do communities meet the needs of their members, and what are the needs of the community members. For assessments, we take a look at the learning plan and locate natural points where students can be assessed. Since every aspect of the learning plan is part of the process of completing the project, we can actually choose places within this process that could be used to assess students' understanding and ability, both formatives and summative. That is logical within the real-world context. For example, we can use student reflection from the interviews of the community members to see if students understand that community members have needs and wants. We can also use their draft city plans to see if they understand that the community's goal is to meet the needs of its members and how the community can bring security and a feeling of belonging. This makes the assessments more of a performance assessment compared to traditional ones, where they involve the demonstration and application of knowledge. Instead of do you know it, it is more about how well can you use what you know. Therefore, the formative and summative assessments are more authentic checkpoints of understanding, instead of random activities that don't connect with the real-world context. Again, this requires an edu-permaculture mindset because we are identifying parts of the process that would actually be assessed within the real-world context. We have to ask ourselves, how would a professional be assessed in this situation? Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to learn more about design thinking and how to integrate it into your pedagogy, please go to the following URL.